Where do I even start with macronutrients? How much protein should I be eating? High carb or low carb? If you find yourself asking yourself these questions all the time, this video is for you. Hey there, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chelsea Mancini, your functional nutritional therapy practitioner, here to take all things nutrition and make them understandable. Today we're talking about macros. Macros 101. What do I need to know? Where do I start? Should I even care about this? When we're talking about macros, and when you hear people throwing the word around, we're talking about the three main classes of nutrients that are what our food is made up of. We're talking proteins, carbs, and fats. Those are our macros. Things like vitamins, minerals, those are micronutrients, and those are very important too, but that's a topic for another day. Today, proteins, carbs, and fats, those are our topic. And here's the main concept. All three are important and should be in a balanced diet. The quantities are going to vary from person to person. Every single person is going to be different no matter what. But in general, proteins, carbs, and fats, they don't exist in a vacuum. They exist together in nature, in the foods we eat. So the idea that one of them would be bad while the other one is mainly good, it's just we've gotten a little off track. So we're going to bring it back to basics. Now, how much of each macronutrient you need is going to be impacted by a bunch of different factors. Things like your activity level from a physical standpoint, your mental activity level, your age, your genetics, what stage of life you're in, your environment, and how you spend your day. All of those things are going to influence your macronutrient needs. But I don't want to overwhelm you. We can break this down to a simple starting point as long as we understand a few of these major concepts. The first thing when it comes to macronutrients that I want to get across, that I really love to explain, is normally when we're worried about macros, we're trying to achieve a desired result, right? Maybe it's weight loss, maybe it's more energy, maybe it's optimal performance in our workouts. For all of these things, what we really want to accomplish is something called metabolic flexibility. What is metabolic flexibility? Metabolic flexibility is your body's ability to use all three of the macronutrients as energy at different points throughout the day, throughout the week, and throughout your life. So we probably know that carbs are quick energy, right? Whereas fat gets burned during long, slow activities. I don't really love the way that's explained. The real idea here is that it's pretty quick and simple and easy for your body to take carbs and make them into the energy that fuels your cells. Whereas that process is a little longer for fats and for proteins. But our body needs all three of these processes at different times. For example, it can be really beneficial to have that quick energy available during an intense workout. But if we don't want to be eating every 2 hours, our body needs to be able to take those other macronutrients and use those as fuel. Or for example, when we're asleep. So as a side note, if you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night, even if you think it's because you have to pee, usually what happens is your body is having a hard time with this exact concept. It's not as metabolically flexible as we want it to be. So it's trying to go this long time period without being given new energy in the form of food. And it's having trouble accessing the stored energy, whether that's protein or fat. What happens is we become reliant on our adrenal glands, and that usually means hormones. And what will happen is we get a spike in hormone levels that wakes us up. And you think it's because you have to pee, so you run to the bathroom and try to fall back asleep. But what's actually happening is just this, is our body's inability to efficiently go between different types of fuel. So that is what we want to fix. We want to make sure our body can use all three of the macronutrients as fuel when it needs to. And so just to recap, let's do a little 101 when it comes to our macros. So first off, we got carbs. So we already talked about how carbs are pretty quick, easy energy. They're pretty efficient for our body to take carbs, make them into glucose, make them into the energy that fuels us. They also are really good for the health of our gut, specifically when they're in the form of fiber, right? We know that we need fiber to fuel our gut. You've probably heard the term gut microbiome tossed around there. When it comes to the health of that, we're talking about carbohydrates. Proteins are more like building building blocks, right? They become tissues, they become things like hormones, and it's essential that we get them from the diet because our body can't make all of the ones that we need. And the same is true of fats. So fats become our literal cells. They are the membranes of our cells. They're important for our body to be able to anti-inflame. They cushion our joints. They make sure our skin, hair, nails are nice and strong and healthy. And they're also essential in the diet. We cannot make them. So all three of the macronutrients really work together, and it's important we have them all in the diet. All right, so now that I'm off my soapbox about that, let's talk more specifics. So as I already mentioned, there's a bunch of factors that go into how much of the macronutrients we're going to need. For most people, I recommend starting with a balanced approach. So that's going to be somewhere around 30 to 35% of each of the three macronutrients. Now, I'm not going into, the science behind weight loss in this video, but what I'll say is, as a starting point for calories, I want you to take your weight or your ideal weight and multiply it by 12. That's your all-around calories. That's how many we need to be getting in the day. Most people are way off track with this. So we're going to talk about using an app like MyFitnessPal to track, and it can be very helpful, but I want you to set your own goals. The goals that you put into activity trackers are often way off base and unrealistic. So you're gonna start by finding your ideal calorie needs by taking your weight or your goal weight if you have a weight loss goal and multiplying it by 12. That's where you're gonna start. And from there, it's percentages. So we'll start, again, like I said, 30 to 35% of each. And the macronutrient I'm gonna encourage you to start with is protein. So as a minimum, you're gonna wanna be getting at least 100 grams of protein in every day. And I say that and people are like, wow, that sounds like a lot. We significantly undereat protein. And that's only really the ideal protein goal for somebody who's around 120 pounds. So if you weigh more than that, like me, then you're gonna need to get more protein in. And this is where something like tracking can be beneficial because we just tend to undereat some important things. Our society is definitely one that tends to say if you want to be healthy, you need to eat less, right? And that's what we're trying to get away from. We want to eat sufficiently to fuel our body. And again, if we have a weight loss goal, we need to eat enough that our body is supported so that it's not under extreme stress, which is going to cause more inflammation, which can cause us to then hang on to weight. So you're going to take your weight, you're going to multiply it by 12, you're going to get a minimum of 100 grams of protein in a day. But for most people, that number is going to need to look more like 120. Carbs are probably going to be somewhere around 150 grams per day and fats somewhere around 70. And that only gets us to about 1,700 calories still. So that's, pretty low. That's still less than 150 pounds. So that's why it's important for you to figure out these numbers for yourself by taking your weight and multiplying it by 10 and then working the percentages from there. So what's the deal with the percentages? So I'll give you a brief overview without trying to do too much math in a video, right? So carbs and proteins both have 4 calories per gram. So if I know my overall calorie goal is 1,800 and I want 30% of those calories to be from carbs and fats, I'm going to multiply 1,800 by 0.3, and then I'm going to divide that number by 4. And that's how many grams of proteins and carbs I'm going to be shooting for in my diet. When it comes to fats, 9 calories per gram. And that doesn't mean fats are bad, they just have more energy potential. That's all that means. So when I'm trying to figure out my fat intake, I'm going to take that calorie number, 1,800, I'm going to divide it by 0.3, or multiply it by 0.3, and then take that number and divide it by 9, and that's how many grams of fat I'm shooting for. Now, this is a lot easier using a tracking tool like MyFitnessPal, but like I said, I don't want you to use the goals that MyFitnessPal sets for you. I want you to set your own. So you can do that by going into your settings. You don't need to have a paid plan. You can do it on a free plan. If you go into your diary settings, you can set your calorie goal based on the number you got when you multiplied your weight by 12, and then you can set your own carb, protein, and fat percentage goals, and it'll tell you exactly how many grams that is. And then you have goals that are custom to you. Another note I'll make when it comes to weight loss and tracking, I want you to track only your food. I do not want you to add in your exercise and then add those calories back in. Those apps and just anything in general tends to way overestimate calorie burn from exercise. All you're gonna track is the food that you eat, what goes into your mouth, okay? Your goal weight times 12, that's how many calories I want you to be eating on your weight loss plan. And again, if you don't have a weight loss goal, your current weight multiplied by 12, that's what it'll be for maintenance. So what's the point of tracking? Should I track? Should I eat intuitively? Intuitive eating is definitely one of the big trends in the health industry now, right? And don't get me wrong, I love intuitive eating. But here's the thing, if we have a lot of inflammation, if we have a history of yo-yo dieting, if we have the need to heal our gut or heal our digestion, if we're experiencing cravings a lot of the time, our body's intuition is a little off. And tracking can be a great idea to help get it back on track. Using tracking as a tool to make sure you're getting enough of everything you need, and then taking a step back and seeing, how do I feel? Is this working for me? Is a good starting point. It's hard to improve what you don't track. For me personally, it definitely took some time tracking before I was able to get to a place where I knew what my body needed to feel satisfied. I had to make sure I was getting in all of the macronutrients and micronutrients that my body needed so that I wasn't having any more offhand cravings. And if you're curious about cravings, I'll link the video where I talk about cravings down below. But taking time to heal the gut, to track and make sure we're getting enough of what we need is what will eventually lead us to a place where we can eat intuitively. And most people are going to do really well with this balanced macronutrient approach. And that's why I recommend starting there. Of course, sometimes some people might do really well on a high-fat diet versus a high-carb diet. Either one can work. It's very highly individual. But here's what I'll say. If we go too low with carbs, remember how I mentioned in the beginning, it's more effort for our body to take the proteins and fats and make them into energy. We want it to be able to do that. But if we're in a place where we're inflamed, our digestion's off, our gut needs healing, we're under a lot of stress, and we try to drop carbs really low, and our body doesn't have what it needs to take the proteins and take the fats and make them into energy, we're gonna get to a point where we're gonna be running off stress hormones. Because like I said, like that waking up in the middle of the night, our body, it doesn't have what it needs. It doesn't have that metabolic flexibility. This is going to increase our body's reliance on our adrenals. And we've heard the term adrenal fatigue. That's something, a big thing going out there right now. And surprise, surprise, so is low carb. So if we go too low carb and we don't have the nutrients we need, our body's gonna rely on these stress hormones and deplete our adrenals, putting us under further and further stress. We don't want that. We want to make sure we're eating enough carbohydrates to satisfy our energetic need while also getting good micronutrients and the other macros. The only way our body will know how to metabolize those other macros is if we eat them, right? We need to make sure that we're fueling properly, not under eating, getting our body all of the things that it needs. And tracking is a tool that I do believe can, you don't have to do it forever long term. Like I said, it can be a really good place to start, to get to know your body, to get to know what it needs. And once you've got an idea of that, you'll need to use it less and less often. But hopefully this was helpful when it comes to macros. If you have more questions on macros, please leave them in the comments below, and I would be happy to dive more into this topic so that it feels accessible, understandable, and not stressful and scary. I'm gonna link my video below to the video on cravings, where it talks about why our body craves certain things and what that actually means that we need, as well as my video on stress and how that impacts our overall health. But to make sure that you stay updated as all my new videos go live, definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Also follow me on Instagram at Chelsea K. Mancini for all of the gut health tips. And you can take the quiz linked in the description below to figure out what's the best place for you to get started when working on your health. All right, see you next time.